Hello, my name is Lynda Teller Pete. I am a 5th generation Navajo weaver. I currently live in Denver, Colorado with my husband, Belvin Pete, but I am originally from the Navajo Nation. My home communities are Tugre Hills and Newcomb, New Mexico. My parents are Sam and Ruth Teller, whom are not with us anymore, but I do have some siblings, and my older sister Barbara is also a weaver, and we do a lot of projects together. Biil'éé, Lynda Teller Pete in Shia, Tó'aheedlíinii Shlon Tó'aheedlíinii Bashashin, Hatnangahni Dashanan, Ashie Dashache, which Shijado Shama Eyaha, Ruth and Sam Teller Wolye, Biltasatsodo, Bisas Aide, Ayesanasha, Dewit Outson and I credit my mother with teaching me how to weave, but it was actually my older sister Roseanne, whom we lost in 1996, that taught me the parts about the designs, the color combinations, the intricacies of and the complexities of the design. She was really well known for that. And my sister Barbara, I learned a lot from her. Her stamina, her marketing techniques, all of that. And so my family has been very supportive throughout my whole weaving career, and they still are. There are a lot of memories associated with weaving. When I am going to sleep, my mother would finally have the quiet time that she needs to weave, and I could hear her, the beating of the comb, and she beats very softly, and it sounds like a heartbeat. And so you go to sleep with that sound. It's very rhythmic, very soothing. And then in the morning time before we get up, again, she has that quiet time that she needs to weave. So we wake up because she's beating harder, and it's very energetic, and you wake up to those sounds. And interestingly enough, when I meet other Diné people and they find out I'm a weaver, whether they're a weaver or not, they will say, my memory of my mother or my grandmother weaving is the sound of the comb, the heartbeats. And so it's just, universal amongst the Diné people. I learned how to weave by observing my mother. And later, when I turned 6 years old, my older sister I have 2 older sisters, and they were both weaving. And as I turned 6, I got my first loom. And actually, my loom was another loom that was braced on the back of my older sister, Barbara's loom. My father nailed them together. So we sat every day facing each other, and we wove. And as the younger child, you always want attention and you want to play. And so I would watch my sister through my warp strings. And with the weaving tools, you have an arsenal of weapons. So I would take my batten and I try to, stick it through the warps and make her, try to poke her or whatever. And she would holler and scream, and my mother would come and she would put a sheet in between the two looms so that we wouldn't see each other. But again, I would start emulating, like, I'm Casper the Friendly Ghost, and I'd try to stab her. But anyway, those are the fun times, but the weaving comes with a lot of protocols. According to our protocols, weavers cannot weave their own dress. And in my family, there were no dressmakers. We were strictly Tugre Hill weavers. And in order for us to get our dress, we ask a weaver whose values are similar to ours, or we ask a weaver whose attributes we want to emulate. And so the weaver will put their protocols into making that dress. In the old days, the dresses were made out of red wool, indigo, natural brown, and most of the time they put in 4 lines for the 4 directions. And some of the designs are basically, it may mean something to the weaver, it may mean something to the family or the community that they live in, and we can't interpret what the design would mean unless the wearer will tell you. And so for us to step out in the world, the dress protects us from the elements. It's a spiritual protocol for us as we wear the dress. the holy people recognizes us as Diné women. We have a place in society that we have to uphold the values, and the dress reminds us that we have to live in those protocols. Most Navajo women or Diné women wear these dresses. In the 1800s, these were the dresses to wear. These dresses can be worn every day, doing tasks. They can be worn for formal wear, semi-formal, and for ceremony wear. Most young ladies get their first dress after they reach puberty, which we have a ceremony for it called kinalda, and they choose a mentor. The rug dress is usually woven for them, and their hair is brushed, and it's a 4-day ceremony, and everyone who comes to the ceremony may be wearing these dresses. The belt is usually a sash belt, and a sash belt is a representative of adulthood. When a young girl reaches puberty, she is given a sash belt to wear, and that is representative of the female energy. The colors, the green, red, yellow, they all have significant meanings, and it varies from family to family. You know, the green may represent the rainbow, the fringes represents the female rain, and then if the wearer or the family is well off, they may accompany the belt with a concho belt, a silver concho belt. You can load on the jewelry, you can have a simple squash blossom. This is an old-fashioned squash blossom. You can have a newer one. You can have strings of beads, you can have coral, and lots of bracelets, rings, earrings. You can dress up or dress down your dress. The materials from the 1800s are usually biil'éé, and this particular dress is biil'éé, unraveled biil'éé. The indigo blue, it has been left in a 2-ply and respun. The brown for the midsection is a natural brown. They probably use pignon pitch to dye it darker brown, but as the wearer wears the dress, it does develop creases, and so the natural brown shows through. The red has been analyzed, and it's a mixture of cochineal and lac, and it's been respun as well. And the lac indicates that the dress was made right around 1800, maybe a little bit later, maybe a little bit earlier, we don't know, but that's usually what the dye will tell us. The added tassels are synthetic yarn, so that was added later. It wasn't woven in. In the early 1800s, it was very common for collectors to get old dresses and separate them. And the panels were sold to other collectors or to museums. And back in those days, without knowing what the dress was and with its size, the long, narrow size, a lot of it got mislabeled as saddle blankets. Some of the dresses were really thick. They thought they were saddle blankets. Some were woven thinner, and they weren't quite sure what it was. But most of the time, 2 panels were sold to 2 different museums or 2 different collectors. For this particular dress, there was a collector who sold 1 piece to the Cranes, and the other piece, I think, kind of traveled a while, and then that piece got sold back to the Cranes as well and reunited the panels. However, they weren't sewn together. They were just 2 panels put in the same box. When I was contacted by Steve Nash to be part of the Crane book, I teamed up with Diné Bikéyah, another Navajo weaver, and Dr. Lori Webster and Louise Stryver. So the 4 of us actually poured over a lot of the textiles in the Crane collection. And when this particular dress came up, Diné and I were looking at it saying, I wonder why they won't sew this back together. Of course, museums have their policies and things like that, and so our requests kind of didn't make it out in the world or out in the universe. But it did bother me a little bit. And as I continued my journey to go to other museums, participate in projects, I started noticing a lot more that the dresses were separated. And 2 years ago in October, we were looking at dresses at the Field Museum in Chicago. And my sister Barbara and my husband Belvin and I looked at one panel. We studied it and then rolled a table, and another table came up. And we started conversing, and as we looked down, we said, we already saw this dress. And the intern said, no, you haven't. And we said, no, this is the dress we just saw. We said, roll the other table back. So they rolled the other table back, and they were two identical pieces. And it was almost, I'm going to say it was almost 100 years apart of when those pieces had come in. And they were a match. And the curator asked, should these be together? And in unison, we all said, yes, they should be together. And so the curator put, with each having its own paperwork, put them in the box. And to me, that was a historic occasion because those dresses have been separated almost 100 years. And for them to be in the same box really sent a gratitude to the holy people that the prayers were intact by the weaver and by the wearer. So I'm very early in my project, and I'm very grateful to the Denver Museum of Nature and Science for giving me the opportunity to put a dress back together. And Kathleen Martin, the conservator, and I spent last June sewing the piece back together. And I think it's the first time that a museum has allowed this, and I hope it's not the last.